It just blew. Sakurajima, one of the most active volcanoes on the entire planet. And it didn't just rumble, it exploded. Ash shot up to 11,000 feet. That's 3,350 meters straight into the sky. Japan's meteorological agency has issued an urgent travel alert, and this is not a drill. This is happening right now. The skies over Kagoshima are turning gray. Ash is raining down on the city. And the question everyone is asking right now, is this just another eruption? Or is Sakurajima building towards something far, far worse? Further in this video, I will explain exactly why scientists are genuinely concerned this time. Stay with me, because this one is different. So let's talk about what actually happened here. Sakurajima volcano, located in Kagoshima Prefecture in southern Japan, erupted with serious force. The eruption column, that's the ash and gas being blasted upward, reached approximately 3,350 meters. That's 11,000 feet above the crater rim. Let that sink in for a second. 11,000 feet of ash and volcanic material punching into the atmosphere above a city of 600,000 people. Japan's meteorological agency, the JMA, responded immediately. They raised the volcanic alert level and issued an urgent travel warning for areas surrounding the volcano. Large volcanic rocks, according to the JMA alert, have the potential to be ejected up to 2 kilometers, that's 1.2 miles, from the Minamadake crater. That is the active crater that has been the main source of explosive activity on this volcano. Pyroclastic flows, and I'll explain what those are in a moment because they are terrifying, are possible on the southern and eastern slopes. Authorities are urging residents and any tourists in the affected zones to stay indoors. Keep windows closed, wear masks if you go outside, and absolutely do not approach the volcano. The ashfall is already impacting Kagoshima City directly across the Kinko Bay. Flights at Kagoshima Airport have been affected. Visibility is reduced, and this is all unfolding as we speak. Now you have to understand something about the people who live around Sakurajima. This is not a place where people just moved in without knowing the risks. They know the volcano. They live with the volcano. Some families have lived in its shadow for generations. And yet when you hear the residents talk about what it's like when Sakurajima really blows, it stops you cold. One resident from the Kagoshima waterfront described watching the eruption column rise from across the bay. She said it came up so fast. One moment the sky was clear. The next, a massive dark column was climbing and climbing, and there was this deep, deep boom that you feel in your chest. That boom, guys, that is not something you forget. And the ash. People who have lived through major Sakurajima eruptions describe the ashfall as suffocating. It covers everything: cars, rooftops, gardens, playgrounds. A fine gray powder that gets into your lungs, your eyes, your food. Children in nearby schools were kept indoors. Parents were calling schools asking whether it was safe to collect their kids. Farmers in the surrounding agricultural zones are watching helplessly as ash settles on their crops. One farmer, whose family has grown vegetables on the slopes near Kagoshima for over 40 years, said, "Every time this happens, we lose weeks of work in hours. We clean it up, we rebuild, and then it happens again." And then he said something that really stayed with me. He said, "We don't leave because this land is who we are." But I wonder sometimes whether the mountain will eventually make that decision for us. When I heard that, I had to stop for a moment, guys, because that is exactly the reality of living next to one of the most persistently active volcanoes on Earth. And it raises the bigger question. How long can a city of 600,000 people continue to operate in the direct shadow of Sakurajima? I'll get to that. But first, guys, before we go deeper, can you do me a quick favor? Give this video a like and a hype. Share it with someone who needs to see this. Leave me a comment. I read every single one. It costs you nothing. It helps this channel enormously, and it means more people get the information they need. Okay, let's get into it, because this is where it gets really fascinating. So why is Sakurajima so extraordinarily active? And why does an eruption like this one carry a different level of concern than a typical volcanic event somewhere else in the world? Let me break this down properly. Sakurajima sits in the Ira caldera. Now, a caldera, that's the scientific term, is essentially a massive collapsed volcanic crater. Think of it like this. Imagine a giant underground chamber filled with magma, right? At some point in the past, that chamber empties catastrophically in a super eruption. The ground above it collapses inward, and you get this enormous bowl-shaped depression in the earth. That is a caldera. The Ira caldera formed approximately 22,000 years ago in one of the largest volcanic events in Japanese geological history. That eruption, and this is a number I want you to really think about, ejected an estimated 450 cubic kilometers of material. To put that into perspective, the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in the United States, one of the most famous and destructive volcanic events in modern history, ejected roughly 1 cubic kilometer. Ira was 450 times larger. 450 times. And Sakurajima? Sakurajima is essentially a volcanic vent sitting on the rim of that same ancient caldera system. It is directly connected to the same magmatic plumbing that powered one of the most violent eruptions this planet has ever produced. Now, the JMA and volcanologists from Kyoto University monitor the Ira caldera system extremely closely. And here is the detail that genuinely concerns researchers right now. GPS measurements and ground deformation monitoring have shown that the Ira caldera has been inflating. Inflating, that's the scientific wording, means the ground is physically swelling upward and outward as magma accumulates in the chamber below. It is like pressing on a balloon from the inside. You can feel the pressure building even before anything breaks. Studies published by the National Research Institute for Earth Science and Disaster Resilience, NIED, have documented this ground inflation over the past several years. And the key point here is this. When the caldera inflates, that is magma arriving and accumulating at depth. When enough pressure builds, that magma finds a way out. And the way out is Sakurajima. These eruptions we are seeing right now, they are the volcano releasing pressure from that system. But here is what volcanologists will tell you honestly. These smaller explosive eruptions, they are not necessarily emptying the chamber. They might just be venting small amounts of pressure while the larger accumulation continues. And that is the scenario that keeps researchers watching this system very, very carefully. Now let me explain what pyroclastic flows are, because the JMA specifically warned about them in today's alert. And people sometimes dangerously underestimate how deadly they are. A pyroclastic flow is a fast-moving current of superheated gas, ash, and volcanic rock fragments. Temperatures inside a pyroclastic flow can reach 700 degrees Celsius. That is 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And the speed? They can travel at over 700 kilometers per hour. That's 430 miles per hour. You cannot outrun a pyroclastic flow. You cannot drive away from one. If one forms and you are in its path, you have almost no time at all. This is why the exclusion zones around Sakurajima exist. This is why the JMA warning is taken so seriously. And in an intensified eruptive period, the risk of larger, more damaging flows increases significantly. So I did a little research into the history of Sakurajima, and guys, what I found puts today's eruption into a context that I think most people simply do not know. Sakurajima has been erupting in some form almost continuously since 1955. Think about that, nearly 70 years of continuous volcanic activity. It is one of the most persistently active volcanoes on the entire planet, but it wasn't always a peninsula. Before 1914, Sakurajima was actually a separate island in Kagoshima Bay. Then came the Great Taisho eruption of January 1914, and this event, I have to say, is one of the most dramatic volcanic events in modern Japanese history. The eruption was catastrophic. It ejected an estimated 3 billion tons of lava. 3 billion tons. The lava flows were so enormous, so voluminous, that they completely filled the narrow strait between Sakurajima and the Osumi Peninsula on the mainland. The island became a peninsula overnight, literally connected to the Japanese mainland by hardened lava. Over a dozen villages were buried. Approximately 58 people died, though some historical accounts suggest the true number was higher, as the eruption was preceded by an earthquake swarm that fortunately prompted many residents to evacuate beforehand. The 1914 Taisho eruption is considered the benchmark event for understanding what Sakurajima is truly capable of. And here is the detail that stopped me when I found it. The volume of magma discharged during the 1914 eruption is roughly comparable to the amount that scientists estimate has been accumulating in the Ira caldera system in more recent decades. This is not a claim that another 1914 scale eruption is imminent. No scientist will tell you that with certainty. But what it does tell you is that the system has a demonstrated capacity for that scale of event. And the geological record shows a clear pattern. Sakurajima goes through periods of relative quiet, then escalating activity, then major eruptive episodes. There was also a very significant eruption in 2022. The JMA raised the alert level to its highest setting and issued evacuation advisories for residents closest to the volcano. That event produced eruption columns exceeding 6,000 meters, nearly 20,000 feet, and it sent a very sharp reminder to everyone in Kagoshima about exactly what they live next to. This is not a new problem. This is a recurring reality, and today's eruption is the latest chapter in a very long and very intense story. So why does this matter beyond Kagoshima? Why should someone watching this anywhere else in the world pay attention? Let me tell you. First, the immediate human scale. Kagoshima City has a population of approximately 600,000 people. That is not a small town. That is a major metropolitan area sitting directly across a bay, roughly 8 kilometers, about 5 miles, from one of the world's most active stratovolcanoes. In terms of population exposure to volcanic hazard, Kagoshima is one of the most significant cases on the entire planet. Second, the aviation impact. Kagoshima Airport serves as an important regional hub in southern Japan. When Sakurajima produces significant ash columns, aviation is directly affected. Ash particles at altitude are extremely dangerous for jet engines. A single ash ingestion event can cause complete engine flameout. The 11,000-foot ash column from today's eruption entered the airspace that commercial flights use regularly. That is a serious operational aviation hazard, requiring rerouting, delays, and cancellations. Third, and this is the part I really want you to think about, the broader volcanic arc context. Japan sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Its volcanic systems are not isolated. Sakurajima is part of the Ryukyu Arc volcanic chain, and seismic and volcanic activity across Japan has been notably elevated in recent periods. These systems are connected at depth through the same subduction process, where the Philippine Sea Plate is diving beneath the Eurasian Plate beneath southern Japan. That subduction releases water into the mantle above it. That water lowers the melting point of the rock. The rock melts, magma rises, and that magma feeds volcanoes like Sakurajima. So when we see elevated activity here, it is part of a much larger geological conversation happening beneath the entire southwestern Japan region. This is not random bad luck. This is not just one volcano having a bad day. It is a reflection of where Japan sits tectonically and what the plates beneath it are actively doing right now. So what happens next? What are authorities watching? The JMA will be monitoring several specific indicators very closely right now. Eruption column height. If subsequent explosions produce columns significantly higher than what we saw today, that signals a direct escalation in eruptive intensity. Ground deformation. The GPS and tiltmeter networks around both Sakurajima and the broader Ira caldera are running continuously. Any acceleration in ground inflation tells scientists whether magma is still accumulating at a dangerous rate. Seismic activity beneath the volcano. Volcanic tremor, that is, a continuous seismic signal caused by fluid movement in volcanic conduits, is one of the most critical warning signs researchers track. An increase in volcanic tremor, especially if it migrates deeper, indicates the magmatic system is pressurizing further. And pyroclastic flow monitoring via thermal cameras and drone systems around the exclusion zone perimeter. Now, I want to be honest with you here, guys, because I think it matters. Sakurajima erupts frequently. Most eruptive events are contained, manageable, and do not escalate into something catastrophic. The population of Kagoshima has adapted to coexisting with this volcano in a way that is genuinely remarkable. Evacuation plans. Ash cleaning protocols. Volcanic shelters dotted across the city. They take this seriously. But the ground inflation data, the magma accumulation in the IRA system, the historical record of what this volcano is capable of, these are not things you can simply dismiss. The question volcanologists are genuinely grappling with right now is whether the current eruptive activity is sufficient to relieve the pressure building in the system, or whether it is just a surface expression of something much larger still building below. And right now, guys, honestly, nobody can answer that with certainty. That is the real situation. And that is exactly why the JMA, Kyoto University's Disaster Prevention Research Institute, and monitoring teams from MEAD are watching this around the clock. Because when you have a caldera system of this scale sitting beneath a major city, connected to one of the most active volcanic vents on Earth, you do not take your eyes off it. Not for a single moment. Guys, I hope this gave you a real understanding of what is happening at Sakurajima right now. Not just the headline, not just the ash column number, but the full picture, the geology, the history, the real human stakes. There is so much more connected to this story. Japanese volcanic arc activity, the Ring of Fire, what the subducting plates beneath Japan are doing right now. All of that is in the end screen. Go check it out. If you want to support the channel, you know where to find me. I don't want to do a brand thing here. You know how it works. A coffee goes a long way. And if you're new here, subscribe. Because this is the kind of content I bring every single time something significant happens on this planet. And right now, a lot is happening. Stay safe, guys. Be aware. Look up. Look around. Know where you are. Bye-bye.